Eric, I like this comment here from Steve because it ties into our next piece a little bit. Steve says, from your previous show, it seems like 90% of Dorsey's offense was coverage beaters. That's all about players winning and hoping Josh reads it at the same time. And then he says, is this normal with other NFL teams? So to a degree, and Eric, I think it's a perfect segue to our next piece with Ken Dorsey and talking about the offense and how complex it is, or the conversation about how complex it is versus how simple and predictable. But you will see, some offenses run conceptually, but a lot of the top offenses today, there's more schemability to them in terms of getting players open. The phrases we use here all the time, like creating easy buttons for the quarterback or for offenses and so on and so forth. But this was a great comment from Steve, Eric, because it ties in right to this kind of next piece in terms of conceptually what Ken Dorsey's offense was like from a passing perspective, from a route perspective, and what was asked of the players within that. And then also tying it back to, a point we just made earlier in terms of being able to play fast or not so fast at times.
Yeah. And I mean, to an extent, yes, other offenses do similar things, but they're more direct about it. There's more purpose behind it. They're picking a specific situation where they know they're going to get cover 2 so they can run their cover 2 beater, as opposed to Dorsey coming out on the first and second plays, throwing half of the field a cover 2 beater just in case they see cover 2. So it's more direct. It's more purposeful. So then you add in the creativity angle we talked about earlier and the lack thereof. So you have a little more eye candy, right? So it is, yes, to an extent, but it's dressed up a lot differently and it's more purposeful when they do run those. And I love this segue, Anthony, because in many ways, you even heard Josh talk about it the other day in the presser about, after the games last week, I think it was, I'm just trying to run the plays that are called. You could feel the pressure he had felt in that players only meeting. Like, it was obvious. I think they were telling us, they felt that something needed to change on offense. And they even said, no, it's the execution. They kind of went out on a limb for Dorsey. So we should have kind of known that maybe something was on the horizon. Now, we didn't expect them to lose to the Broncos and for it to happen. But I think it was inevitable. But when it comes back to the coverage stuff and the routes, it's so interesting. There's a great conversation on Twitter today about, hey, how come we always hear about these players, especially what wide receivers? Was it Tavon Austin you always bring up that said trying to learn the offense, the Bills offense, and how complex and difficult it is to learn it? How can guys come in and say how complex and difficult this offense is, but then you hear all these analysts, including ourselves, and all these defensive coordinators and all these players, say that it's a simple, predictable offense? It's a great conversation to have, and I think this is a great time to do it. Just a perfect time when you're talking about Ken Dorsey's offense versus the other offenses in the NFL.
Yeah, that's a really great kind of jump off point, because I think people conflate the two or merge the two in terms of thinking, this offense is too simple and too predictable. Vanilla has been another synonym or hot button verbiage topic that's been used to describe this offense. But really, Eric, when it comes down to that Dorsey piece on offense, it starts with what's initially asked of the pass catchers, whether it's tight end or wide receiver, sometimes running backs as well. And it's something we've talked about a bunch here, the option aspect of this offense, and it's one of the reasons we were so excited for Dalton Kincaid to be drafted, because of his ability to process post snap and leverage space and understand coverages and recognizing, where he has to go and what his responsibility is. And then having it's somewhat innate ability to connect with Josh Allen and see the same thing at the same time, a la kind of what Cole Beasley did at times. But Eric, like we've talked about so much, and it is a significant point when it comes to Dorsey in this offense, it ties into this thing we just mentioned earlier, not being able to play fast. So much of this offense from a route standpoint and a design standpoint was, okay, on the snap, read the leverage of the defender. If he does this, you do this. If it's coverage this, you do this. If it's coverage that, you do that. And having to do that is a lot to ask of a player going out in the route distribution. But then also tying it back to the quarterback, like we've said, the quarterback has to see that at the same time, in the same way that receiver sees that. And it just, when it works, like we've showed, it's indefensible, because you are reading and reacting to the defense. So when it works, the defense can't do anything, because they're damned if they do, damned if they don't. But the issue is, when you have to consistently execute at that high of a level over and over again with a multitude of players and a multitude of pieces, you present the opportunity to kind of get stuck in the mud at times because you have to play a bit slower because you're not just going out and, all right, cool, I have a 10-yard out. Let me,
Right.
do what I can to run this out. You have to read 2 or 3 things and also beat your man physically to get open. It's a lot to ask. And I think that's where the complexity piece starts. And then we can also tie it into how that can be predictable and what defenses can do knowing that the Bills operate in that way.
Right. With the concepts, most of the passing concepts, especially dating back to Dable, being in that, Earhart Perkins mold of the Patriots and, the system he came up through, but also old run and shoot concepts. You talked about Beasley. He brought a ton of run and
Mhm.
shoot concepts. Bills still run them. The Bills still run them. Those choice routes, which we'll see in the film room later, each route within a route concept has adjustments. It could have 5 to 7 different leverage adjustments in essentially a different route, 5 to 7 different
Yeah.
ways in one play call. So obviously that takes reps and memorization, whether you're in the book or on the field. And that takes a wide receiver and quarterback being on the same page, that rapport. And so you always hear Josh talk about body language and why that's so
Mm.
important. Well, that's why. So you hear a lot of these guys coming in and especially new to this offense, and they say, that's why it's so difficult to learn. That's just one aspect. Obviously, the volume is probably a whole nother
Oh,
aspect that
yeah.
we don't even know about. But what we can see, that route options, those leverage reads, obviously are a big part of this offense, and at times does slow them down. And a defense can just change the leverage of a defender, and again make you do something else, or maybe even funnel you into what they want you to do. And that's where the simple and predictable, discussion comes into effect, and something we've been talking about, something that is the hot button topic really when it comes
Mm.
to the Bills offense, because we've seen, and this is a good, going back to Steve's question about, other teams running it.
Mhm.
Yeah, other teams do it, but they present it differently. The Bills have such strong formational tendencies. You hear guys talk about, hey, 2 by 2, what do you think they're running? Like, I can show you if you guys come here every week, and for those that you don't, I could show the people that come here every week a screenshot of a 2 by 2 formation on a specific down and distance, and the defense in a single high or a 2 high look. And I'm sure if you guys have been with us the last few weeks, you could pick out what routes they're going to run. It's that simple. It's that predictable. And it's stuff that, again, we talked about. Here's your cover 3 beater. Here's your cover 2 beater.
Mhm.
Whatever they come in, then you attack that side of the field. Well, that was stuff they were giving Josh Allen like his first year and a half. They should have evolved beyond that. All
Mhm.
right. And so I think that's where the predictable and simple kind of cross the complex and tough to learn angle of this offense. And then finally, like I said, the defense can dictate things. You saw it with the Bengals, and that interception
Yep.
that we're going to go over. The defense can do certain things, just moving a defender around to bait the quarterback to throw it here. And we've seen that a few times this year, which again, we're going to talk about Allen's mistakes, but we're going to show you how some of what Dorsey was doing kind of handcuffed him and kind of cornered him into making some of those mistakes.
That dictation piece from the defense is such, and like it is such an ironic result because the whole point of like running such an option based offense is to be able to dictate to the defense. But then the Bills became so formationally and or alignment based from a predictability standpoint that those option routes kind of worked against them because defense could be like, well, if we do this, we know they're going to run this. Like how many times like we know, okay, here comes the in from Stephon Diggs. Or my favorite one is always even just like the, okay, here's trips and they motion, they kind of run that motion to the running back to the trip side. It's going to be that draw or that keeper for Josh
Yeah.
Allen up the gut, which they ran this
Yep.
past week in that game. Last year against the Jets, ironically, they ran it like 4 times in a row and it was snuffed out each time. Not 4 times in a row, but like drives.
Yeah.
And the Jets had it snuffed out. And that's where I think that's such a great way to like put it because so much of the conversation, I think people are getting lost in the sauce a bit when it comes to this offense asks too much of people. And then on the other side, it's like, well, no, this offense is too simple and too vanilla. And it's a bit of both. Like it is complex. It is tough to learn and process. Again, that Tavon Austin piece is awesome. Guy who was well traveled and he came in immediately and was like, this offense is the most challenging I've ever had to learn in my time, like in my playing career. And that is awesome on the one hand, but at the same time, led to some predictability, unfortunately, for this Buffalo Bills offense.